It is my absolute pleasure to, first of all, welcome you to this event and to also introduce you to the absolutely phenomenal and incredible people behind me on the stage. This first panel is titled Innovation in Music, and here's our précis. Since the beginning of time, Black music has been synonymous with innovation, from techno to house to amapiano, Afrobeats, and countless other genres. The music scene has relied on creativity and new ideas of working. In today's world, there's the question of how we can revisit these techniques to create new sonic features. So, in a first-of-its-kind dialogue, we bring together key voices in the global Black electronic field, featuring some of the originators of techno and electronic music, from pioneers to contemporary hitmakers, to explore how Black electronic music has traveled worldwide, live in one of the cities from which the genre originates, Detroit. For this talk, Homecoming's founder, Grace Ladoja, MBE, will be speaking to a panel of DJs, producers, and industry heavyweights on pioneering their own scenes, learning lessons from the past, and allowing for ownership and representation for Black creators at the forefront of new music styles. So just a little bit about each of the people on stage. Of course, our moderator, Grace Ladoja, MBE, is the founder of Homecoming, an annual festival platform and ongoing cultural exchange between Africa and the world. She is also the co-founder of Metallic Inc., a company that connects brands authentically with audiences whilst giving back to the global creative community. Over the past decade, Ladoja has forged indelible relationships between artists, brands, and audiences at the heart of youth culture, working with the likes of Skepta, SARS, Supreme, Nike, and many more. In 2018, she was awarded an MBE for her outstanding services to music. Please welcome Grace. Kevin Saunderson, hello, is one of the world's leading DJs and music producers and a co-creator of the techno genre. Considered a definer and purveyor of various electronic music styles, Saunderson is the architect of some of the most cherished songs in electronic music to date, via his solo releases and work in groups such as Inner City. A platinum-selling recording artist, he has toured globally and continues to release music to critical acclaim. Moving into his fourth decade at the helm of house and techno, he has a mission to continue spreading these genres to the world. Please welcome Kevin Saunderson. Cornelius Harris is a music manager and cultural critic committed to amplifying the cultural significance of Detroit, its musical history, and sonic advancements worldwide. He is widely known for his work with the likes of Jeff Mills, Drexciya, and most prominently, the legendary electronic music collective Underground Resistance as label manager. Working with artists in genres ranging from jazz to rock to hip-hop and many more, Harrison continues to work in the media sector, both in Detroit and internationally. Please welcome Cornelius Harris. SARS is a producer, DJ, and one of Africa's most essential beatmakers to date. Whilst a mainstay figure in the world of Afrobeats, SARS's productions are genreless, with styles and influences reaching across Afrobeats, Afropop, electronic, and more. As a producer and composer, his credits include megastars like Beyoncé, Drake, Wizkid, Burna Boy, Skepta, Naira Marley, Chris Brown. I could go on and on. So many of the world's leading global artists. Please welcome SARS. And last, but certainly not the least, Sky Jetta is an international DJ and producer hailing from Detroit, Michigan. A widely celebrated music industry figure, she has toured with the likes of Baby Tate and collaborated with a range of leading brands and organizations, from Gucci to Burberry to Nike and many others. She is also the creator of non-profit organization Fly Women DJ, an outlet to support women working in the DJ, nightlife, and music industry. Please welcome Sky Jetta. I'll now hand over to our incredible moderator, Grace, to kick off the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eniafe, for the amazing introductions, because they were so clear. First and foremost, thank you everyone for attending today. This is a really important conversation to me. My life work is about how do we talk about things that are really important that we can own. And music is such a big commodity for us. Music is probably our biggest soft power globally. And there's so much to learn about how we can lead the conversation, but also own the conversation. And when we were invited by Afronation, thank you so much for inviting us here to have a conversation. For me, this was exactly the conversation I wanted to have. How do we talk about innovation in music, but we really talk about people that are creating the new blueprint, and how can we own that? So I feel so blessed to be sharing the stage because these are people that I've spoken to and I admire, and I'm so excited to hear what they have to say. For me, Homecoming is a platform of culture exchange. That's what we do. We're all in culture, we're leading culture, but we need to exchange it. My work primarily takes place in Africa now because I feel like there's so much opportunity for us to build there. All the mistakes that we've made all across the world, we can put into that and make that one of the richest continents for culture ever. And that's what I feel like my life work is to do. So this conversation for me was really about a really funny Twitter conversation that happened about a month ago, where they were talking about a genre called Amapiano. So Amapiano derives from South Africa. It's a house music-inspired genre. And people in South Africa were arguing with people in Nigeria about the origins of house music. And they were both talking about claiming it. And I was like, oh my God, there's a huge gap in knowledge here. There's no archive of like, where did this originate from and who pioneered that and how did we even get there in terms of dance music, electronic music as a whole. But ultimately, what I was so excited about celebrating is that it was all founded by Black creators and innovators. So it made me feel really inspired to have this conversation here in Detroit, because I feel like Detroit was able to birth so many phenomenal genres when you think about it. And I had a wonderful conversation with Cornelius about a week ago, and he kind of gave us a really top-line rundown and reminder of what has happened here. So I'd love to give my first question to you and say, in a snapshot, could you tell us why and how and what Detroit has done to innovate in music and some of those genres and people that have been birthed from here? Because there's some people that are here for the first time, and there's people that, almost more importantly for me, that are watching this for the first time. And that gap that was on Twitter, we have the opportunity to fill. So I'd love to hear from you on that.
Well, that's a lot.
Snapshot. I said.
I was going to say, yeah, I was like, wait a minute, how do I do this? Detroit is key musically in a lot of different genres. Detroit had a long history with blues, gospel music. A lot of people globally are familiar with Motown, the world's largest independent record label in history. There will probably never be another independent label the size of Motown that changed the entire way the music industry functions. And I think that alone is something of note. But then, of course, when you look at techno, techno is something that was born here. House, we give credit to Chicago for that. And even when you look at hip-hop and you look at the contributions of someone like Jay Dilla, who just completely changed the sound of hip-hop, Detroit has really been the focal point of a lot of incredible musical shifts and changes. And it's a great history to be from and to be a part of. And we've got, we've got the Motown Museum, we've got Exhibit 3000, the Techno Museum. We've got different things here to honor that, not as much as there should be, but there are things here for people to explore and get deeper into that.
Thank you. That's so amazing. And yes, I think that one of the big things you talked about is how do we archive that? I know there's so many great things happening here, but I'd love to see more of that in other countries and other places to celebrate how phenomenal that impact has been. My next question is for you, Kevin. Basically, I want to just ask you a question, blue sky question, because I wasn't there. So you were able to create and pioneer, co-create a new genre at that time where, you know, that music wasn't really at the forefront of everything. YG told me the other day that this is a 2 billion plus industry now today. You know, I'd love to know like how that, just on a creative level, like what happened and what was going on at the time and where you were at to be able to create that.
Real quick, 7.5 billion.
7.5, my bad. $7.5 billion industry, which is phenomenal. And that, we will talk about it later about ownership, but just on a creative level, because there's going to be so many people that are inspired to know, you know, what their environment could essentially birth. Because at that time, I can't imagine Detroit was, you know, I don't know. So I'd love to know what was going on and how you were able to bring that to life.
Well, I think for me, I went to school with Juan Atkins and Derek May, and Juan is definitely the originator. He gave out the vision of creating music for the future, and I felt like at that time I was like athletic and played sports. I loved music, but I wasn't locked in at the time. But as I went to Juan's home, we all lived in Belleville, a suburb of Detroit. So we wasn't even in the city at the time. Juan was from Detroit. Derek was from Detroit. I was from Brooklyn, and I moved here. So it was an outlet for me. Coming from Brooklyn to Belleville is like, yeah, you can't even imagine it. So it gave me an opportunity to fall into something that I felt like I loved or liked music. That was it. And seeing tools and electronic equipment that one could make music theirself, I was blown away. I thought you got to have a bass, a guy on drums, a full band. And that was never my inspiration, even though I love music. So through time, and it took some years, it didn't just happen overnight, but as Juan started creating music first, me and Derek were very close. And Derek was kind of the person that was always around Ron. So I kind of learned from Derek, and I was around it all. And eventually in college, and actually, but when I graduated in high school, Juan played and Derek played, DJ'd at my house. We had a house in Belleville. My mother decided to move to Southfield, so it was, she gave me the house for another month or whatever. So we had these parties there, and Juan and Derek would come play. And that was really inspirational. Now, you got all these black high school kids and black kids that knew Juan. He started this organization called Deep Space, and it was such a great atmosphere to see people listening to Juan playing his own music. Now, this is the beginning of techno, so it was a mixture of music. It wasn't just techno. It was some early house. Actually, I don't even know if house was actually being played at the time. But anyway, through college, I was playing college football, and I decided this music, these tools, I wanted to get my hands on these tools. And I just think once I was able to get a few pieces of equipment and started practicing or started learning them, should I say, at the same time I was becoming a DJ because I wanted to, if I seen Juan DJing, I seen Derek DJing, it inspired me again. So for me, it was all about the love of the music, and I had a deep passion. So school, that was my school. And I think timing was right. The vision was, if I wanted to make something, I could make it myself. And I didn't have to rely on anyone's opinion. It wasn't really important if you liked my music or not, because I liked it. And we all were creating this in a competitive way, but constructive way too, because we would listen to each other's stuff, and we would, you know, Derek might say, "Oh, that's not hot," but to me, it was hot. So, for instance, when I made Inner City, I was a little different than Juan and Derek. I was from New York, so I like vocals, like songs, like melodies, and that's kind of what made me stand out a little different. It wasn't just about the instrumental underground records at the same time. I wanted people to hear the records, of course. I wanted to, I like songs, and I was more of an uplifting type of cat when I created. So Derek would say, I will never play that record. That record is not good. And that first record was big fun. So it was my first hit. So we would have these kind of competitions, and it was all about the love of the music, the drive, the passion. Starting our own record companies. We didn't rely on other companies at the time to even release our music. I didn't care about that. I wanted to have control. So, I can go on and on. And I mean, it's just so much happened through the time of doing all this. Driving to Chicago, giving our records to record stores, letting them listen to it, order some, taking some out the trunk, giving them a box, 2 boxes, all that kind of stuff. Finding all the different Farley and all the different DJs that play music, giving it to them. So we were hustling too, making the music, businessmen. We were just doing it all at that time.
That's amazing, and there's so many great takeaways from that, actually, that I think that a lot of people can get, especially SARS and Sky, who I'm going to ask my next question. So SARS, thinking about everything that Kevin just said, and like the spotlight being on Africa now, and everyone being really excited about what's happening there. And, I always call it the gold rush to Africa again. Like, all the labels are rushing there. Everyone's trying to sign stuff. There's so much excitement. There's so many things happening. There's, who's going to get there first? There's people trying to set things up without ever going there. And we've got this kind of like urgency because it's the only new now. There's something new that no one has ownership of yet. So there's 2 sides to it. You've got the creative side, which is you and the thinkers, and then there's a business side that is like the industry. But what my question to you is more about the creative side, and kind of like thinking about answering kind of what do you think that makes African music so exciting right now, as someone that's so integral in it, especially let's focus on maybe Nigeria and South Africa, and like thinking about what one has said and some of the things that you do yourself about ownership, and do you know what I mean, making sure that you have your deals set up, etc., with your academy. How do we make sure that we own a bit of that excitement? The first question is, what makes music from Africa exciting from your perspective?
From my perspective, it's a bunch of things, especially like growing up in the 90s in Nigeria, we're heavily influenced by Western music. It was literally just hip-hop playing, and that didn't change till maybe the early 2000s. And that really influenced the kind of music I make. And I think it's like a familiar stranger concept where we take like bits and pieces of other genres and also like mix that with our own African music. So you hear our music, it sounds like you've heard it before, but you actually haven't. So it's exciting. It's like a push and pull effect, and this is, my own perspective. And I think also just the spirit of Nigerians, like we're hustlers, we're a country of 250 million people. There's so much energy, like it's undeniable. Like it's if there are Nigerians in this room, it's very undeniable. Their presence is felt. So you feel that with the music, you feel that with the people, you feel that with the culture. There's no way it's not going to be exciting. And as regards ownership, I was literally having this conversation offline, and I think we need to replicate everything we're doing. We're exporting our music, everywhere in the world. We need to do that back home, because I think there will become a time where our music may not be as exciting as it is now, and we need to like fall back to the hub, which is Nigeria and Africa in general. And I don't think the infrastructure we have back home can sustain, the growth of Afrobeats right now. So I think we really need to look into that and make sure that, we're getting the right deals, we're doing the right partnerships, we're, owning our music and not just, exporting it. I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. The infrastructure and the ecosystem needs to exist in Africa, which it doesn't. And I guess that's why we have to have this urgent conversation, about how do we...
Yeah, like for example, I think like a month ago, Burna Boy had a show in London at an 80,000 capacity stadium. And that's not something he can do back home because the infrastructure back home can't support that. Like probably the biggest venue we have in Nigeria is like a 7 or a 10K capacity stadium. So what happens when this excitement dies and we all have to go back home and perform? Are we gonna like downsize, the genre or what? So it's very important to like look into what's also happening in the continent and not just what's happening everywhere else.
And I think that's really quite important parallel of what's happened with, the genres that have come from Detroit, because we're talking about the $7 billion industry, right? Is it thriving in Detroit? Are people, is everyone getting that 50% of that $7 billion?
No.
So
not at all.
So the point is valid. It's like, so it hasn't happened, in the past. So how do we set it up to happen in the future, and I think it's definitely the part 2 of my conversation is going to weigh in on that. But for now, Sky, I just wanted to just come back to another part of creative side, because obviously you grew up in Detroit, you're from here, so your second wave of, this amazing genres and electronic music. You said you're a fan of Kevin, Wajid, all these people that you've met, etc. But you also play amapiano. You also play Afrobeats. You play all this music. Mm-hmm. So how do you feel that the music scene? Where do you think it sits now? Like what is we're talking about what the great things historically have happened here. Where is it now? Where are things at now?
I would say, coming from a DJ perspective, myself and my peers, we try to implement a lot of Detroit techno, Chicago house, New York house into our sets, because I think it's just important to keep that going. We don't have a lot of producers at the moment in this scene, but as far as like the ones who are able to push this genre and keep it going and like grab the torch from the OGs and like what they started and what they created, we always implement it into our open format sets. You may hear a lot of hip hop where we spin at Spotlight, Deluxe, wherever in the city, but you'll always hear a good techno, a ghetto tech song that comes from Detroit in every single set. And the audience always responds to it really well. I think it's just what's in our soul. The ghetto tech is something that was just birthed into everybody here. So I don't think it's hard to keep it going. We just got to get the producers and we just got to pass that torch and just keep it going from here.
I agree. And thank you.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to just bring it back to is kind of that last point of how do we learn from our mistakes? That's what we'll call it. We've made some mistakes, or we've had some, no, let's not call them mistakes. How do we have implement the key learnings into the future? So we've learned that we've got a $7 billion black pioneered genre that is not thriving in the place that it was birthed. How do we apply that to the future?
Well, I'm going to, try to just jumping in because I get all emotional about this. No, I was going to say, number one, I would say that there are mistakes that are being made. However, I think that it's not so much mistakes. I think it's a byproduct of what we've been through, when you keep in mind that, you know, it was, and I'm going to jump back to Motown for a second because that is in my mind kind of the blueprint for a lot of stuff, because black folks were not allowed to have labels. You know, what would happen is you'd make your records, you'd send them out, they'd sell them, and you'd never get paid on them. And then your label would have to fold. You know, there were structures designed to keep people from succeeding. And I'm going to say, when you look at Africa, really the whole diaspora, the effects of colonialism and all these things are still at play. So when we look at some of the problems that we're having, a lot of them, I would say, a lot of it's due to structural things that are in place that make it difficult for people to have these companies and do this type of business and to be able to thrive and be successful in this. And, you know, man, he was just, you know, so I was just talking about, you know, Nigeria and the infrastructure. And again, you know, a lot of those things are the result of history and things that have happened and taken place to set up countries to not have those things and to rely on Europe for everything, to rely on in this country, the white community for whatever. The great thing I think about a lot of this is that, you know, and again, looking at Motown did it with support from family. You know, it wasn't, you know, there was no grant, there was no bank loan that came in, there was no financing that was there to support them in that. That was something that was done within the community. And I always say, when I look at it, it's always inspiring for me to see that and to say, okay, the key to a lot of our success has been to look within for that support and to build from there. And a lot of great things can come from that. So I think that a lot of what we've done has been on the right path. I think that when I look at what's happened in Detroit with the music, one of the great things is that pretty much everybody, you know, owns their stuff and has the ability to do deals or set up things the way they want to and to have that kind of control. I would say for these new genres of music, that's essential. And there may be all kinds of obstacles to get through for that, but I would say it's absolutely essential that Afrobeat artists and Amapiano and all these folks are able to retain ownership of their stuff and to move forward on that. And there's going to be challenges, there's going to be difficulties in that, but again, you're doing this in the face of all this history and all these things that have been designed for that not to happen. So our story, in my mind, is always about doing better than what the expectations are, being able to succeed when the odds may be against you, and constantly moving things forward. So even when I look at the mistakes, I see those as pluses sometimes. And I can just say that you know, Kevin and the other guys that came before us, we would learn a lot from these guys. These guys were very open about the good and the bad. And it gave the rest of us the ability to learn from that and to improve and make things better. That communication, those networks, that community, there's a lot of power in that. And I can safely say that Underground Resistance, Submerged, you know, none of what we have would exist if it wasn't for these folks who came before us and kind of helped guide us on some of that stuff.
Amazing. Thank you, Kevin. Do you have anything to add? Because it's quite important.
Well, I was thinking about something that Cornelius was saying, and you know, when you look at it, you think, well, did we make a lot of mistakes? You know, I would say no. We were kind of just caught in the system at the time. So, for instance, okay, I have Big Fun. This record is blowing up. I'm putting out all these copies, selling as much as I could possibly sell on my own. And the part about not being able to receive our money, like from distributors, because distributors would like just kind of hold on, like press your record, get you to do another one, and try to get you to do another one, and you would see very little money. But of course, the way to get your money was have a hot record. Now, if you got a hot record, they want to pay you right away. So So Big Fun was hot. So I could get my money so I could repress, all right? But here's the problem. Trying to keep up with the demand and what was going on with me, for instance, the pressing plant. And I just happened to be driving in the area one day, and I said, let me go see how the records is going, because I was pressing Big Fun. I was pressing other records on my label. And I see all these records just laid out, and it's got all my KMS, whatever, 0011, that identifies a record, right? So I figured out then that these guys were pressing my records and selling them to the distributors. I was getting less orders, even though I was still getting orders, but I couldn't control that. What could I do at that time? It was nothing I could do. So what I did do was take all my stampers, which you needed that back then. And so, I mean, we're talking about pressing records compared to streaming, of course. It's completely different. You got physical copies, and the stampers is what the pressing plants needed to press your records, and you could only press but so many, then you had to get them recreated. But anyway, so that was one thing I could do, and try to find other pressing plants. But the problem is you couldn't control it. So eventually I gave in, and I ended up putting it on Virgin, 10 Records at the time. That signed in the city over to them. So then the next problem was they want to pay you whatever, 10% of the income, and then they want to charge you back against that 10% in expenses. It's like, what do you do? What do you do? So I wouldn't say it's so much mistakes then. It was just was part of the system. So it's a little different now, but you got all this streaming stuff going on. People you don't make money off of that either. So it's really like, how do you benefit from your, and it's not all about money, but it is if somebody else is making it. You know what I mean?
It's all about money.
Right.
Sorry.
I'm saying if somebody else is making it, then yeah.
It's
But so yeah, you want your fair share, but who understands how the whole system is working with all the streaming and who's making money off of it right now? How do you get ourselves in a situation where we got control of that? And Cornelia said it, copyright's definitely important. Back then it was lifetime of copyright. You don't have to do that no more. You don't have to take that.
Did you have some? Thank you so much, Kevin. Did you have something to say, Sky? I've got no.
I had a question for Kevin. So with the printing companies, did they ever, were there any Black-owned companies that creatives or producers could go to back then?
Not that I was aware of. Not at all. It was Archer here in, that was the only plant I knew here. And then you had to start dealing with other plants. And it was just nobody you could really trust.
Wow.
Right. I think even Submerge started to get some pressing stuff. I don't really know the whole story, but I remember
trying to set up for mastering,
right?
Which is the first step
right.
before that. But still, it's not the pressing plant. Yeah, they're expensive. The machines are expensive to maintain. If anything goes wrong, that's a huge expense right there. It's an oil, vinyl is an oil-based product. So as the price of oil goes up, so does the cost of manufacturing. It's difficult. It's real difficult, and it's not a fun job. So a lot of people aren't necessarily looking to voluntarily go into it because it's hot, and you're melting this vinyl and pressing it. It's in the summer, it's the worst place you could be. So a lot of people don't have any interest in getting into that.
Final question before I put it to the people in the room, this is a conversation, so everyone should contribute. So as these genres grow and they become global and, they become more mass, how do we, keep a sense of origin and understanding of where things originated and, so it's not lost and it doesn't get confused? And we've had, so many conversations about misinformation. How do we, and this is for probably everyone, how do we do that? Because I think that that's such a key part in this ownership conversation and us being able to really be able to take that to the next level. So does anyone want to take that?
I feel like it's already there. People just need to find out, and not just be ignorant. Yeah, the information is always out there. Yeah.
Anyone else?
I do want to touch on the topic that we talked about over dinner last night. Recently, I was a little bit ticked off this week because I noticed that there was a white female rapper in Detroit who recently got accolades on a public platform, news outlet, about her music. And her music is Detroit rap style. And I just felt like it's really, sometimes I feel like it's really important as a community kind of just to like call things out and just kind of speak up on it. Because I do feel like there's a lot of people in Detroit who deserve that type of recognition internationally, like this white peer just got recently. But as far as that, I think it's just going to take a little bit more of like gatekeeping and just kind of like giving knowledge on where these things come from, because it just everything gets whitewashed, and I think we just got to keep it within ourselves sometimes and just kind of like like I said, gatekeep it. So I think the answer is just gatekeep.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that it's really important because especially when you think about genres that are coming out of Africa and how easily transferable they are to other genres that exist, especially like an Amapiano. So someone like, that is prolific in that world could come to South Africa, sign all the DJs, sign all the producers, do you know what I mean? Put them through their label and start that same, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean mistakes, I did correct myself, I said learnings. So how do we, as collectively do that? And how do we acknowledge, because that is really easy to do. I've seen it happen countless times, still to this day, and I think that we have a responsibility, especially, people that we know that it happens. We know that it's possible. So how do we ensure that it doesn't keep repeating itself? Because if not, then people can say more for you. You guys know and you're still letting it happen. Okay, so you're not bothered, So that's more what I meant by that.
Okay.
Anyone? No worries if not, but...
I think the whole idea of gatekeeping is like it's a nuance, especially in our community, right? Like we always say, like, let's gatekeep our ideas and say let's not allow others into it. But I think that's the issue. What is why it's a $7 billion industry that we're not a part of, right?
Exactly.
So you say if SARS creates an infrastructure and now he finds the proper partner to now go back and say, okay, we can now help all of West Africa. We can now help all of East Africa. We can now help South Africa. We can now also go help the UK. But he built the proper strategic partnerships to now open up the doors and say, yes, I'm part owner of this, but we're building this together.
Yeah, totally. And that's exactly what we mean. I mean that when we don't have any ownership in the conversation.
So in a business aspect and not a creative aspect.
Yeah.
No, even on a creative aspect, like the thing about it is, and I don't know if you ever heard this thing, but they say just because you get a great idea doesn't mean there's 8 billion people in the world. Somebody exactly at that same exact time got that same idea you got. It's the person who goes to market and brings it to market, and the person who follows through with that idea is the one that succeeds in it. So that being said, in the same aspect, and you can look at it even right now with Afrobeats, or you look at it think about the blues to rock and roll, right? You had Cadillac Records who now goes and says, hey, we're gonna we got Howlin' Wolf, we got Etta James, we got all these different people that, yeah, they helped build it, but they didn't ask for ownership in it. What did Howlin' Wolf say? I'm owning all my shit. I'm owning everything. Like, I'm never gonna borrow against the store. I'm gonna own everything I do. And what happened? He died with money. He died with ownership. So the part where you don't have ownership, you don't have to gatekeep it. You just have to know who to partner with and understand your value in that situation. And actually, you are what you negotiate.
Yeah. I think everything we enjoy today are things that are not gatekept. Like, I think things just die when you gatekeep it. For example, imagine if we heavily gatekeep Afrobeats. There will be no song like One Dance, for example. And I think One Dance is one song that put like light into the genre, and everyone that's making that genre right now has benefited from that move some way, somehow. So I don't think gatekeeping is the way. I think if it's great, share it to the world. Like I was saying, we're all bleed the same blood.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to I'm right here. I want to piggyback off something Cornelius said about Motown. I feel like it was essential. When it comes down to like building stuff for our community, I think it's going to take our community. A lot of times people need to go look for those other resources because that's where the resources are. So a lot of times in our own communities, we got too many people trying to be kings or too many people trying to be cooks in the same kitchen, which is honestly, I feel like is okay because there's room for everybody. And everybody can be a king in their own right. But I think if we start thinking about it as, essentially how he's saying, like, with the bigger picture, bringing in like a stadium in Africa, like that's beautiful what you're saying, like to think about the fact that you guys don't have that and all this music is being performed all over the world.
Before someone kills me back home, we have stadiums.
Okay. But you know what I'm saying?
But I think it's more of an economic problem. Like it's insecurity. Like the logistics of going to the stadium. They're probably like bad roads.
Right,
you're thinking about your safety, things like that. So that's why there are only a few venues that you can go that can you would have a good show and guarantee your safety. And they're like a 7 to 10K capacity.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But even still, you know what I'm saying, just the fact that I feel like it's going to take the community that knows the community to be able to build that. Yeah. It's just, if those people can actually come together, you know what I'm saying, I think that's what just like, Motown's, the benefit of Motown was that they were family, right? So, everybody kind of got something out of it. If we can kind of essentially take that mentality, if it's our people thing, we family, right? You know what I'm saying, we can take that little bit of mentality and, filter it toward this, I think we can get somewhere.
Yeah, I think like back when we first started making music, myself, Derek, Juan, Eddie Folks, Blake Baxter, San Antonio, the list goes on, and Mike Banks and onwards, right? So we kind of had our own niche, and everybody was kind of locked in and inspired from each other. But as, you start developing and different people's careers started elevating, and maybe this guy's didn't really plateau or move up, then you start getting a disconnect when, we can support each other. We always play each other's records or whatever, gave each other records. It started shifting. So sometimes the problem is, it's not as easy to work together, even though, that's the vision. And it don't always go that way. Somebody gonna go, somebody gonna make it, somebody not. And somebody always gonna blame somebody. And that's some of the stuff that I've seen when you try to bring people together to do that. Another example is we had this idea, me, Derek, Carl, who else? I think Kenny Lark and a few of us, right, to put a festival in Hart Plaza. So guess what? We see this festival right now today. It has an influx of money that comes to the city. It was our vision to do that, okay? So we bring somebody in outside who we actually know. One of the partners separate, and they bring somebody else in. It happens because, maybe we didn't all agree on the way it should have started or how it should have been in Hart Plaza. So Carl brings Carol Marvel in. She kind of was connected with the city and bought sponsorship in. For whatever reason, the festival happened. So we were not a part of that at the time. We just kind of popped up, and all of a sudden, Carl was working with this lady, right? So we supported him because he was our brother, and he was still a part of the scene, and we thought, if it's going to happen, we're going to support it. So we support it. The first one happens, right? Carl gets fired because he don't agree with Carol, right? Then it gets handed over to Derek. Then it gets handed over to me. And I'm dealing with the city of Detroit when Kwame was in. So you think we would have the real support there, but in the end, guess what was going on? you had people from the city coming in and taking money and grabbing pieces and wanting this and wanting that. And that just destroyed a lot of trust and working with people and people in your own city too now. So there's a lot to go with saying work together and work as a community, because there's a lot to go with that too. So I've experienced it. So say it again.
It's a city event and like residents can't come for a discounted price or free. It's weird. It's like you have it right here in the city. People live.
It used to be free.
Okay, so it was free. I'm the one that changed it because the city didn't support it to give us enough money to make it, to let it grow, to support itself. And it was great. It's great if the city, if it could have remained free, because I thought it had a special connection of everybody, and it could grow and as far as youth and different cultures and everybody coming together. So, but we had to charge because we needed it to support itself. And I was at the beginning of that, and I tried to charge cheap, $5, $10. That wasn't enough to really cover it. Let's put it that way. So it's working because there's a lot of money involved, and people will spend a lot of money on those tickets now, and they bring a lot of artists. Detroit, they support Detroit well, but artists from around the world, but it's different, you know.
I'm going to say, I'm just going to have to jump in on that, because I got a lot of mixed feelings. I mean, I love the city because I love the people. As far as the city administration, I have no love for it, and I'm going to say that I think that I'm going to say I think this guy was done wrong, horrifically wrong. I think the type of abusive relationship that the city has to its creative community is the source of a lot of issues. You look at cities like Nashville that support the music scene. You've got these other cities that recognize that music is part of the economy of that city, and Detroit hasn't figured that out, which is ridiculous. I mean, Detroit's one of the major music cities in the world, and yet the city government has nothing to support that. So I think that, again, we talk about, infrastructure. I mean, you talk about Nigeria, we could talk about Detroit and say that, we've got plenty of problems right here. I think the fact that, and not to harp too much on the festival, but, this music was created by young black people, and young black people can't afford to go. So, what kind of horror is that? So we've got some severe problems, just along those lines. And so, and again, I will say that when Kevin was doing it, he set up shop over at Submerge, where we're at, because again, we want to support, so we got some firsthand experience with seeing how folks were not treated right, and how people were robbed, and all kinds of other slander and stuff went out in the aftermath of that. So it's hurtful. It's hurtful. It's infuriating. But this is what we're dealing with on this side of the fence. So you've got a lot of folks who are out here fighting and trying to make this stuff accessible. People putting on events and trying to do things to do it. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that we got to get through for that. And again, I just think that's unfortunately what we've always had to go through with this. This is just the next chapter of it.
Boom. So, first off, thank you all. Thank you for even coming up with our homecoming, and bringing it to the city. So this remark, it may be a question in there somewhere. I'm going to start with a remark. We are all talking emotionally about the same sentiments of ownership, the same sentiments of control. Sky, I fucks with you on this idea of gatekeeping. Bryce is going to offer another word into the space, custodian. because gatekeeping sometimes triggers people, but being a custodian of the material culture that we produce is our fucking responsibility, y'all. So however we feel about the word gatekeeping, we are supposed to be the custodians of the things we produce. Yet, in order for us to even be in that role, then we need to start looking at this conversation in new ways. And this is me just offering some things to seed that conversation. Ashe.
Thank you so much.
I just want to throw something out there, just kind of riding off some of that and thinking about ownership. And sometimes, we think of ownership in terms of a piece of paper, and, that exists. But there are different types of ownership. If you fall in love with someone and they fall in love with you, even if there's no paperwork, you guys own each other in that sense. And I'm going to say that, we set up the only techno museum at Exhibit 3000. Recently, some folks in Frankfurt, Germany, decided that they were going to lay claim to that. And they were going to say that this music came from Frankfurt. Now, the beautiful thing about it is we take full ownership of our history and what this is. What was beautiful was to see all of these people in Germany and other parts of Europe come out and say, no, that's from Detroit. And this stuff got shut down by Europeans because they knew and they understood it. And I'm going to say that they likewise, took ownership of the music in that they were like, this is music we love. This is music that we care about. And we know where it comes from. And so we're not going to let somebody else change this narrative when this thing that we know and love, we know where it comes from. So I think that there's something to ownership, but then there's also something to opening it up so that other people can take a type of ownership of that as well. And so they can feel like, look, they've got the right to defend it and to get behind it just as much as we are. So I think it's balance. We own it, but at the same time, we say everybody who loves this music owns it. And so it's that duality that, and it's tricky. It's tricky, but I think that that's needed in these situations where, we can claim our stuff, we can claim ownership of it, we can celebrate it, do it whichever way we want, but at the same time, open it up so that other people can come into it as well.
Love that.
I just want to say, my name is Frances Worthy, and I'm an elder, as you can see. And the reason I bring that up is because one of the things I want to say is that you have to start learning from history, and we don't do that too well as people. For one thing, if you learn your history, you learn your culture, and culture is very important in everything that you do. And this is one reason why we are fractured as a people, because we don't really know our culture and our history and who we are. And I'm going to go back and say, I mentioned my name. One of the things I do is give music tours of the city of Detroit. I do music tourism. And the reason I do that is because there's more to the music of Detroit than just Motown. And that should be put out there all the time. And behind that music, each one of those genres of music is a history. And we need to know that. And because we need to know the history, we need to start being able to analyze and also strategize about how we're going to use our own innovations and our creativity. And we don't do that too well either. And that's why it's open. And I just want to say something. One of the things we do is we get words and we run with them. Everybody has been on this word gatekeeper. That is not the reason why the gatekeeper would use. Gatekeepers were black folks that were put in place to filter out other black people being in charge of something. So gatekeeper in this sense is used in the wrong way. So we need to do that. And one of the things about the elders is they knew how to work with the system because they studied who they had to deal with. And we don't do that anymore, and especially the younger generation, because you look at reality TV You go on social media and you think you know how white folks work, and you don't. So we need to really learn how to use the system that we are in. And let me just say something else. Black folks in this country had more under enslavement than we do now, and we got more money going for us and more education, so-called education, because it's training. Right. So you need to stop thinking that you had it made because you've been able to get more trinkets. You know, when the Europeans came here, they gave the Native American trinkets. They're giving us bigger, shinier trinkets, and we're falling for the okie doke. So that's one thing. The other thing is when we're dealing with white folks, we have to, Europeans, we have to understand that they come in, they look at our creativity and innovation, they copy it, give it a new name, put it back out there, codify it. That means they pull it all together, codify it, then they regurgitate it back to you and I and commercialize it, and they get all the profit off of it because we have not appreciated the fact that we are innovators and creators, because we have become consumers and copiers of other people. The other thing is we don't learn the business. You know, they said it's show business. We as people go for the show and everybody else going for the business and taking it from us. Now, I used to manage a rap group, and everybody come up and, you know, they say, oh, yeah, you manage a rap group. I want to work with you. I want you to be in it. And I tell them right away, first of all, I don't want to manage you if you're using profanity, disrespecting women, and all this stuff. I don't want to deal with you. The other thing is I don't want to deal with you if you not want to learn the business. And it's interesting how many young people fall off then because they don't want to deal with that. You have to know the business because everybody else is working the business on you. And I think the last thing I'm going to say is learning the business is learning about the copyrights, owning your intellectual property, owning the patents, and also learning to be teachable. Have a mentor. There are a lot of people I go up to and I say, you know, I've learned this because I've dealt with white folks all my life. I'm 80 years old. You know, I've dealt with them. I think I know how it works. And so people say, oh, yeah, you know, you said some really good things and I liked it and everything. Do you think they come back and want to be mentored? No, because they think they know it until they hit that glass ceiling or they're ready to commit suicide, which is really a stupid thing because you're letting other people control you to the point that you're going to leave here and they still here. So we should be thinking about things in a sense of working co-ops as people. We should be doing coalitions, and we should be having collectives. And then we will be able to control that $5 or $7.5 billion that other people are eating off our table every single day. And let me ask this. They don't mind you getting crumbs, but they don't want you to have the cake. So we need to start changing our mindset so we own and make the cakes.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I think that there's no real words we can add to that summary in all honesty. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for your words. Thank you so much to our amazing panelists. Thank you, Cornelius. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Sars. Thank you, Sky. Thank you for this amazing conversation. And thank you for being part of this. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And I think these guys deserve a round of applause.